I've said all the time, when someone gets laid off, they're not just losing their financial security, which is what everyone seems to talk about. Oh, you need a
That's
job
the
because you need money,
focus.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's your reputation. If you worked at an ad agency like Leo Burnett or something, you are a Leo person. Like that's a thing. That's an
Mm-hmm.
identity. If you work at Google, you're a Googler. Like I like how you talked about how these companies have, for good or for bad, wormed their way into our like everything, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
someone who works at Google has like this reputation as a Googler, and they're always a Googler. Like I've interviewed people on this podcast who are like, I'm a Facebook alum, and I'm like, the heck is a Facebook alum, right? And like
Yep.
that, it's like your college, right? It's like I wear it like a brand that I've adopted into my personality, and I do feel that identity is a little bit of a fallacy sometimes in our careers, but it's like technically not there, but emotionally very there. It's kind of a funky thing, but people do, they lose their reputation because the reputation was with the company. They lose their identity because their job title was their identity to some degree, and they lose their financial security. So there's a lot of things to mourn. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and as someone's going through that, you talked about rituals. What are some of the rituals that we could put into place so that we don't fall back on our bad habits or our distractors or our numbing or whatever the other things might be?
Yeah, so I've kind of got two coming to mind right now. And I love this because the loss of identity, financial stability, and reputation are all intangible. You can't touch
Mm-hmm.
them. They don't, it's not like someone has died and you go to a funeral and you see their body and have that whole experience of, for as much as funerals are ceremonies of a life ending, they kind of symbolize the beginning of grieving. And so, but a funeral in and of itself is kind of like the bookend to a life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, here's the end. Here's the last time anybody is seeing you. And then you go on the ground or you get cremated or what have you. This is traditional funerals, or as we know them in
And it's more
Westernized
for the
society.
living, right? For the living to be able to process. What
Yeah,
are your
sure.
thoughts?
I think people have funerals for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes people who have died really want to have funerals because they want to be remembered and make sure that their legacy has an impact. Sometimes, especially if they're a celebrity or something, it's for press and PR.
Mm.
Sometimes it is for the living to get together to tell stories, to mourn collectively, because it's one of the few opportunities that our society gives people to do so. And so, something that you could practically do is have a funeral or a going away party or a retirement for your old position. And so you could either throw yourself a party, go out to dinner. You could, if it's a very sad thing, you could certainly frame it more like a funeral. Um, and you could make this as tiny and ritualistic, like just for you solo ritual, or as public as you want to do it. And so if it's tiny, you could spend, I don't know, an hour or two in a morning with a cup of coffee and a journal or something and write a goodbye letter to this position and then just burn it or never mail it, something like that. Or you could travel your commute one last time and like leave something on the train seat for the next person to find, like a book or something. You could incorporate it with end of work rituals, like cleaning out your desk if you have one. You could lovingly, I'm saying this, write a review on Glassdoor of your experience there. Like there are ways you can publicize the fact that you are leaving a place, or you can make it like really silly and funny, like Martin's leaving this position and going to another one, and so I'm having all my friends over for a party and there's balloons and you can throw darts at the old boss on a dartboard. I mean, like you can make this absolutely ridiculously silly, and of course it's based on the experience you had at the workplace. Was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? Was it a mix of both? Was it a job that was really personal to you or one that you didn't really care about? That all informs like the level of ritual you have surrounding it. But I would advise you to just do something that puts an end cap or a bookend on, and now this season or chapter, my experience of living in that is over. You still have permission for the memories to continue and the feelings to continue, but the experience of living in it is over. The other thing I wanted to say is that in grieving identity, there's often this dismay about, who am I now? What am I now? How do I define myself? Kind of like this person you're talking to who's being bought out by another company. It's like there's this ambiguity about who I am and what I'm doing here. Um, both logically and literally and existentially. It's like these are both happening at the same time.
Hmm.
And something that's been really helpful to me is to um, envision it kind of like a rope bridge. I feel like we live a lot of our lives on solid ground. We live a lot of our lives knowing, if we're lucky, we live a lot of our lives knowing who we are, what we're doing. We can put words to what we're living. And
Hmm.
then there's these seasons where we're crossing from one piece of solid ground to another, and the whole path there is a swinging rope bridge over a canyon that has absolutely no ground underneath it. There's no one around us to help us. It's very isolating, and it's also very wobbly, and we don't know when we're going to land on the next piece of solid land. The only thing we can do is to continue forward on the swinging rope bridge and hope that there's land on the other side. And that land looks like, here's how I define myself. I'm feeling more secure and safe. I have a bit more of my power back. So we're talking about power and security again in those spaces. And so something that has been really helpful to me is to surround myself or to just keep nearby something that's unfinished. So like to have a puzzle that you can only work on one piece a day. You can touch one piece of this puzzle every day. Or if you're a person who wears jewelry, to just have like a tangle of necklaces or something sitting on like a nightstand or the bathroom counter. And it's frustrating, it's agitating because it's not done yet. And you can't untangle it or finish the puzzle all at once, but it reminds you, I am also in a place of not being done yet. I don't know what I am yet. And it's kind of this permission of, I am allowed to be uncertain. I'm allowed to not know. I'm allowed to be in a mid space. Some people call it a liminal space. Brene Brown in her work would call it day two. It's the day between the crucifixion and the resurrection. So there's like holy themes there. But Pixar does this too in terms of designing plot lines for their movies. There's always something that happens day two. It's where the conflict happens, but also the character doesn't know how it's all going to end. And so the audience is also suspended in that unknowing. And so the day three is the resolution, but we're not there yet. We're still on the swinging rope bridge. And so surrounding yourself with something you can look at that's literally unfinished can help you be like, it's okay that I am unfinished also. And it can bring that, again, from paranoia down to practical.
That's so great. And that's also really important to keep in mind too, because like even when you get that job, it doesn't mean you're now never going to be on a rope bridge again, right? Like
Right.
one of the things when I'm working with with job seekers, they always say like, once I get that job, everything will be fixed. And I'm like, no, it won't. No, like your life is still going to be your life. You're still going to be you, right? Everywhere you go,
Oh,
you
I
bring
love being a
yourself.
bubble popper.
Yeah.
Let me just deflate all your hopes and dreams right now.
And I'm
I
like,
do that too, though.
you're still gonna be you. Like every job I've had, I'm still me in that job, right? And like, and I keep saying to them, like, you're just gonna trade job search problems with job problems. And like, I'm like,
Mhm.
why do you not have a job right now? Most of them quit. And I go, why did you quit? Because you couldn't stand being at the office. Well, you can't stand being a job seeker, but why do you think this time is going to be different, right? And it might be different. I'm not saying it's not going to be different. I mean, hopefully we're learning and improving, but you're going to have a manager probably, or a client probably, hopefully, and like that is going to come with it, the problems that that person brings to the role. Or even if you get your dream job, which is what everyone keeps selling on the internet, and drives me nuts, but even if you get your dream job, it doesn't mean anything, because the manager might quit, or your coworker might leave. Like your best friend who works at the company might leave. I remember when my best friend
Mhm.
left the first company I worked at, I left 3 months later because I was like, who do I talk to? Like he was one of the only anchors I
Yeah.
had, right? And like it's so interesting to me how like people will get into a job and then just say, all right, now I don't have to think about the future. And then 6 months, a year, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, all of a sudden they haven't prepped for that next change, and it hits them like a pile of bricks, right? Whereas like I
Mhm.
like how you're saying, keep something reminding you that in you're always incomplete in some way, shape, or form. So it's good to have that. I don't know about like that foot out the door, because that's not right, but like have
Right.
that gleam in your eye of what's in the future. um, and I also want to touch on that other piece that you mentioned, where when it comes to celebrating, I never thought about celebrating a layoff or a transition, or anything like that. I think quitting, maybe people celebrate, like you'll quit and then
Yeah.
everyone will take you out to drinks as on your
You're
last
like, I'm
day. That's
free. I'm free.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's happened to me a few times. And those have been the most interesting parties, because like I had a job where we always had happy hours, like almost every day of the week. It was like way too much. And I always called them unhappy hours because people would cry at those because the client yelled at them that day or something. And I remember on my last day, like they were like, all right, we're going to celebrate you. You're going to go do your own business and whatever. And we're all at this place, which I love this restaurant. So I go there all the time. And like, I have flashbacks to this every time I'm there. But we were like standing around having drinks and everyone was like, oh, congrats. Like, you know, you're going to do your own thing. And my old manager, she had a few, and she comes up to me, she whispered in my ear, she's like, you're inspiring me to leave too. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I was like, cool. And like those moments are so funny to me because it's like everyone is having their own experience. Everyone's having their own emotional thing going on. And I appreciate you saying that, like those celebrations are good, because the last time I was laid off from a job was such an interesting moment to get laid off. I got the meeting put on my calendar for like a Thursday morning, and I sort of saw the writing on the wall. I knew the business was shifting from B2C to B2B, and I knew there were going to be some areas cut, and our area was probably going to get cut. And so, and there had been layoffs in the past and stuff. And so I remember seeing that meeting get put on my calendar, and I knew I was getting laid off. I'm like 98% sure I'm getting laid off in the morning. So I turned to my girlfriend, I go, let's go have a dinner. Let's go have a Martin's getting laid off dinner where I'm pretty sure I'm going to be unemployed tomorrow. And so we went out, we had this dinner, and then the next morning I got laid off, and it felt like a really nice conclusion, especially because my manager was so nice about it. And honestly, she was going through it too. And then that weekend was the start of career therapy. I had a meetup scheduled for Saturday, and I showed up and I go, hey, everyone, I need career therapy too.